uh, he got a call to come to rehearsal, and Duke hired him. And they were supposed to go on the road for like 6 weeks or something. But when they got on the road, they got this big tour, which they were going out to Las Vegas, California, a couple other states. I mean, it was going to be a long tour, like 6 months or something. So he calls me up and he says, "Will you please come out here? Because I don't want to leave for such a long time." So at that time, I just had Lydia. Lydia was 3 years old. So I rented my house out, my little house out, and got what they called at that time a non-scheduled flight. Now, at that age and everything, I didn't know what a non-scheduled flight meant. But what a non-scheduled flight at that time, I don't know if it still means the same thing, they stop everywhere. They could stop anywhere. And in those days, it took, at least 10 hours or so to get to California. And we had to go to Las Vegas because they were in Las Vegas. So I got this non-scheduled flight because it was cheaper. And it was an old army plane, and there were a lot of soldiers on the plane and everything, and there was no padding or nothing, and it was just, believe me, a really awful looking inside the seats, everything. Okay, I didn't know any better. So we stopped at every little horse town going out to California, down, up, and of course I got sick because I get motion sick. And there were a lot of soldiers on the plane. So that poor little Lydia, I don't know how she survived me, but she did. They took care of her. I was in no condition to take care of my own kid, but we made it. We got to Las Vegas, and in those days it was prejudice. I mean, the band, Lydia and I were okay, but the band couldn't go into the dining rooms or the gambling rooms. They had their own room that they could hang out in, and they had some slot machines and whatever in there, and they could play cards and stuff like that. But they weren't allowed to go in the dining room or anything. So I go there and I want to surprise them, and it was a Thunderbird Hotel in Las Vegas, and I said, well, they had the waitresses all had Indian costumes on. I had never seen anything like this in my life, and the hotels, they were all sprawling like hotels are now, but in those days, I mean, in New York, everything was upright. I mean, nothing was like that sprawling. And I remember when the limo took us to eat, they stopped at each hotel to let people out, and they stopped at the Flamingo, and they had these big flamingos on the lawn with the lights on. I thought I was in like fairyland somewhere, I mean, my God, I never saw anything like this. I said, I didn't know it existed. So we get to the Thunderbird, and I get a room, and I said, okay, Lydia, we're going to go down. We got there like around it was coming near dinner time, so I dressed Lydia up. I take her winter coat off because we came from the winter, and we go down to the dining room, and the band comes on. And of course, Lydia, Daddy, she starts yelling, and Charlie's looking up, and I guess he recognized her voice or something, and he was so shocked that we were there. And she didn't understand that she couldn't go running up on the bandstand or something, you know. But finally, he sent somebody out after the set was over, and they take us back to where they were, you know. So he says, you got a room. He says, we're going to have to check out because we have a place on the other side. There's another side of town where we have to stay. We can't stay here. So after everything was over and all, we went over. And the other side of town, I mean, black people had everything. They had all their own gambling places, their own things. The only thing they didn't have was sidewalks because everything was like sandy, very sandy. I ruined a couple of pairs of shoes when we were out there. So everybody on that side of town, you were invited to breakfast, you were invited to lunch. I mean, the people would cook for the bands when the big bands would hit town. I mean, when the big bands hit town, they were like, they just fell all over you. All right, we got through, we stayed in Vegas for a little while, and the comedian Timmy Rogers was traveling with Duke's band at that time. And every morning I have to find, because there's nothing happening in Vegas in the morning, everybody's sleeping, but I had to take Lydia to get breakfast, and you know, so but Timmy Rogers was up, so we used to meet in the morning and have breakfast together. So we left Vegas and we went to Los Angeles, and we stayed at a hotel that, you know, it was a nice hotel, and the Mills Brothers were there, and there were a lot of, you know, black artists that stayed at that hotel. I don't remember the name of it, but they were working at a place called the Oasis. And we went, you know, everything was fine. Duke was so happy. He wrote, he wanted Charlie to get a set of drums. They were premier drums made